Think Lisa Manoban and Frédéric Arnault's synchronized appearances are just a coincidence? Think again. What looks, on the surface, like another immaculate fashion moment is often something far more deliberate when viewed through a wider lens. In today's luxury landscape, appearances are not merely aesthetic decisions. They are signals. Signals to culture, to capital, and to the future direction of an industry that now moves at the speed of global fandom. Lisa Blackpink has long existed at the intersection of music, fashion, and youth culture, but her recent appearances carry a different weight. As a global house ambassador for Louis Vuitton, she no longer simply represents a brand. She embodies its dialogue with a generation that consumes meaning as much as design. Every step she takes at a major show is instantly magnified across platforms, translated into countless languages, and interpreted through the emotional investment of millions who see her not just as an artist, but as a symbol of arrival. And yet, while the spotlight naturally follows Lisa, another name quietly surfaces in conversations among industry watchers: Frédéric Arnault. His presence is rarely loud, rarely overt, but it is unmistakably strategic. In a group as vast and methodical as LVMH, visibility is not assigned lightly. It is calibrated. The timing of leadership figures, the moments they appear or choose not to, often reveal more than press releases ever could. This is where the narrative begins to shift. Because shortly after Lisa's latest high-profile appearance, market observers notice something else moving. Quietly, almost indifferently to online speculation. LVMH stock edged upward, trading around €632, reflecting a modest but notable daily gain. On paper, it was not dramatic. No sudden spike. No frenzy. But markets rarely move on emotion alone. They move on confidence, alignment, and long-term expectation. To be clear, no serious analyst would argue that a single appearance drives billions in market value overnight. That is not how capital works. What matters is coherence. Investors respond to signals that suggest a brand understands where culture is heading and has positioned itself accordingly. Lisa's role within Louis Vuitton speaks directly to that understanding. She represents a bridge between legacy luxury and the evolving tastes of Gen Z, particularly in Asia, where cultural influence increasingly translates into economic gravity. For fans, Lisa's presence feels personal. It feels earned. For the fashion world, it feels intentional. And for LVMH, it functions as something more structural, a visible commitment to relevance without dilution. This is where Frédéric Arnault's name re-enters the conversation. Not as a headline maker, but as part of the architecture behind these decisions. Strategy at this level is rarely reactive. It is built months, sometimes years in advance. What makes this moment compelling is not spectacle, but restraint. There are no grand statements tying Lisa's appearances to corporate outcomes. No declarations linking runway moments to stock charts. Instead, there is a quiet alignment unfolding in real time, culture moving in one direction, capital calmly acknowledging it. That alignment creates tension, because it invites a question without answering it outright. Are we witnessing coincidence or choreography? As Lisa Blackpink continues to occupy spaces once reserved for a narrower definition of global influence, her presence subtly reframes what luxury leadership looks like in the modern era. And somewhere behind that reframing, figures like Frédéric Arnault operate with patience, aware that the most effective strategies rarely announce themselves. They reveal their impact gradually, through patterns that only become obvious once they've already taken hold. The story, then, is not about a single show or a single market movement. It's about what happens when cultural power and corporate foresight begin to overlap in ways that feel seamless, and therefore easy to underestimate. Because once that overlap becomes visible, it raises a far more intriguing question. If this is only the early signal, what comes next? What comes next is rarely announced with urgency. In the world Lisa Blackpink now inhabits, momentum builds quietly, through repetition and recognition rather than shock. Her appearances do not feel like isolated events. They feel like chapters in a longer narrative, one that is gradually redefining how luxury communicates with the present moment. This is precisely why the conversation surrounding her latest show refuses to settle. It isn't because people are searching for scandal. It's because they sense structure. Lisa's evolution within Louis Vuitton has been subtle but unmistakable. Early on, her role reflected the traditional ambassador model: visibility, alignment, global reach. Over time, however, that role has matured. She is no longer framed as a guest borrowing prestige from the house. Instead, the house seems increasingly comfortable allowing her identity to coexist with its own unfiltered. That shift matters. Luxury brands historically protect distance. They curate mystique by limiting access. Letting an artist like Lisa stand so naturally at the center of their image suggests confidence, not compromise. This confidence is also what markets tend to recognize before the public fully articulates it. When LVMH stock moves incrementally upward in moments like these, it isn't reacting to social media noise. It's responding to continuity. Investors are watching how the group sustains relevance across regions, generations, and cultural ecosystems that no longer move in isolation. Asia's influence on luxury consumption is not a future projection. It is a present reality. And Lisa, with her global reach and cultural fluency, occupies that reality with unusual ease. Frédéric Arnault's role in this broader picture remains deliberately understated. Yet his name carries weight precisely because it is not overexposed. In a conglomerate as layered as LVMH, leadership is as much about orchestration as it is about visibility. Executives do not simply react to trends, they anticipate them, often by identifying figures who can translate legacy values into contemporary relevance without eroding brand equity. Lisa's positioning suggests that such translation is not only happening, but being refined. The intrigue deepens when one considers timing. Luxury houses operate on long cycles. Creative direction, ambassador alignment, and regional strategy are planned far in advance. That means moments like Lisa's latest appearance are rarely spontaneous. They are outcomes of decisions made quietly, away from public speculation, where cultural influence is weighed alongside financial sustainability. When these outcomes surface, they often appear deceptively simple, just another show, another appearance, until patterns begin to repeat. And patterns are emerging. Lisa's presence is no longer confined to isolated fashion moments. It resonates across campaigns, editorial coverage, and public discourse in ways that feel increasingly interconnected. Each appearance reinforces the last, building a sense of inevitability. This is where tension grows, because inevitability suggests intention. It suggests that what audiences are witnessing is not experimentation, but execution. For fans, this execution feels validating. Lisa's journey from global pop icon to a central figure in luxury culture mirrors broader shifts in how influence is defined. Talent alone is no longer the endpoint. Cultural resonance is. She represents a generation that values authenticity alongside aspiration. And luxury brands that fail to recognize this risk appearing distant, even obsolete. LVMH, by contrast, appears willing to adapt without losing its core identity. Frédéric Arnault's strategic reputation lends credibility to this adaptation. Known more for precision than spectacle, his approach aligns with the kind of long-term thinking required to navigate luxury's current inflection point. The goal is not short-term hype, but sustained relevance. Not dominance through noise, but influence through alignment. Lisa Blackpink fits into that equation not as a marketing tool, but as a cultural constant whose presence signals understanding rather than opportunism. What makes this moment especially compelling is how little is being said officially. There are no sweeping narratives pushed outward, no grand explanations tying artistic presence to corporate strategy. Silence, in this context, becomes a form of confidence. It allows observers to draw connections on their own, which often proves more powerful than explicit messaging. The absence of overstatement invites speculation rooted in observation, not rumor. As Lisa Blackpink continues to navigate these spaces with composure, the industry watches closely. Each appearance subtly raises the stakes, not because it promises something immediate, but because it hints at continuity. And continuity in luxury is everything. It is what transforms moments into movements and collaborations into frameworks that endure beyond seasonal cycles. The tension now lies in anticipation. If this alignment between cultural influence and corporate strategy is already visible, even without overt acknowledgement, then the implications extend far beyond a single show or a single market uptick. They suggest a recalibration of power, one where influence flows through culture first, and capital follows with quiet affirmation. The question is no longer whether this matters, but how far its effects will reach once the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. At this point, the story no longer belongs solely to runways, charts, or headlines. It exists in the space between them. Lisa's presence has begun to feel less like a highlight and more like an anchor, something stable around which meaning accumulates. When she steps into a room, the reaction isn't just admiration, it's recognition. Recognition that luxury, in its most resilient form, now listens as much as it speaks. This is where the broader implication settles in. LVMH does not chase trends. It absorbs them, restructures them, and integrates them into a system designed to last decades. Lisa fits into that system not because she is momentarily popular, but because her influence is durable. She connects markets that were once treated separately: music and fashion, East and West, fandom and finance. That connective power is rare, and rarity has always been the true currency of luxury. Frédéric Arnault's role, still largely unseen, becomes clearer precisely because it avoids spectacle. Strategy at this level is not about authorship, it is about coherence. When cultural figures align seamlessly with corporate direction, it suggests leadership that understands timing, not rushing visibility, not forcing narratives, allowing meaning to crystallize naturally until it feels obvious in hindsight. What we are witnessing is not a pivot, but a refinement. Lisa Manaband's journey reflects how modern luxury redefines authority, not through distance, but through relevance maintained with discipline. The modest movement in LVMH stock, the calm consistency of its messaging, and the absence of dramatic claims all point to the same conclusion. This is not reaction. It is continuation. And continuation is where true power resides. Because once a narrative no longer needs to announce itself, it begins to shape perception quietly, persistently, and across borders. Long after the show lights dim, that influence remains, circulating through culture, reinforcing confidence, and setting expectations for what comes next. If you're here for surface-level moments, they pass quickly. But if you're drawn to the deeper currents, where culture, strategy, and legacy intersect, this is where the story truly begins. To stay inside that conversation and experience future narratives like this before they surface publicly, subscribe to the channel and join our premium circle, where insight is treated not as content, but as perspective.